So it's almost 1 p.m., so officially we can say good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for welcome to this exceptional panel to discuss regulation, evaluation, and governance of health technologies at the AI era. So of course it's going to be very different from the previous talk. This is, I believe, one of the most important conversations in healthcare today. How do we build trust? How do we build trustworthy but safe technology, accelerate innovation, and reshape regulatory frameworks for technologies that evolve much faster than the rules governing them? I'm delighted and truly honored to be joined by 4 exceptional experts who are shaping this landscape globally. First, Professor Petra Ritter, a pioneering neuroscientist and director for international affairs at Charité in Berlin. Petra leads the European Testing and Experimentation Facility for Health AI and Robotics, one of Europe's flagship infrastructure for trustworthy AI. Through TEF-Health, she is building a distributed cloud ecosystem supporting the future European health data space. Next, Saila Rinne, head of the Unit for Artificial Intelligence in Health and Life Sciences at the European Commission's AI Office. Saila and her team are at the heart of Europe's AI strategy, shaping investments in genomics, medical imaging, virtual twins, and data infrastructures. We also have Professor Hiroki Habuka, research professor at Kyoto University and one of the world's leading voices on agile governance. Recognized by the World Economic Forum as one of the Agile 50, shaping the future of government, Hiroki works on distributed, flexible models of regulation. And finally, Francesca Colombo, head of the health division at the OECD, where she leads global work on health system performance, quality, financing, and digital transformation. She has advised government worldwide and notably led landmark OECD reports from health at a glance to health in the 21st century. So let's start our discussion with Petra. From your experience leading major AI and data research infrastructure, what are the most important lessons regulators should learn from the scientific community when it comes to evaluating or approving AI-driven health technologies, which by nature evolve constantly?
Yeah, we are facing one real challenge, namely that we have no catalogs of tests for trustworthy AI at the moment. And trustworthy AI is important, of course, and therefore the mission of the testing and experimentation facilities, the TEFs that you have just mentioned, is to develop tests for validating and testing AI systems. And this is the basis for trust, but also for the possibility to compare different systems and to test whether they are compliant and whether there is conformity with the regulations. And the TEF-Health is developing such tests for the clinical sector. It's very important to see that, of course, it requires clinical researchers in order to assess whether an AI system really helps a patient. Yeah, it requires embedding in hospitals, and therefore it is so important that hospitals are part of these testing and experimentation facilities for building trust in AI systems in healthcare.
Thank you very much, Petra. So turning now to Saila, one of the challenges we often hear about Europe is the regulatory puzzle, right? Which data, medical device, HTA, AI regulations, which are evolving in parallel and somehow has to work together. From your perspective, how can we ensure these frameworks work together rather than in silos and provide clearer guidance for innovators in the health space?
Indeed, there have been several regulatory initiatives that have come into force recently. just to mention a few, on the data side, we have the European Health Data Space Regulation, which is unlocking data for healthcare. There is, of course, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is still there to ensure that there is data protection in place for everyone. Then we have the cybersecurity framework and the AI Act, and of course, and the many other regulations such as the medical device regulation. We are fully aware that this is a puzzle, and the Commission has taken several steps recently to help the innovators and companies to navigate this environment. Only last week, the Commission put forward a simplification initiative, which is really looking into making it easier for companies to get the approvals that they need. And also there is the AI Act Service Desk that was established a few weeks ago, so everyone can go and ask questions about the AI Act. And also the interplay between the AI Act and medical device regulation, for example, in that field we have a guidance document that was established and drafted by experts recently, and these are the kind of measures that we are taking in order to facilitate innovators and companies to navigate this space.
Yeah, I must say those guidance documents are incredible resources and very useful to navigate those new regulations. Turning now to Francesca. You've pointed out during our discussions in preparing that panel that varying interpretation of AI rules make it difficult to scale health solution across countries. So for you, what are the main obstacles to interoperability and regulatory alignment, and how can we move forward?
So I'm very glad that you bring the issues of scale here, because, I mean, let's be frank, we hear a lot about the potential of artificial intelligence, and there are some very powerful pilot and examples, but they remain at a very micro level. And unless really we leverage and achieve the scale, we will not have all the potential gains, whether it's in terms of innovations, in terms of research, in terms of cutting waste in health system, in terms of clinical optimizations, patients empowerment, all of that. We won't have that unless we're able to have something which is scalable and not having fragmented solutions implemented at a local level, not talking to each other, and so forth. So that's what we do actually at the OECD. We try to encourage countries going in that directions, and there are perhaps four main barriers of obstacles that we have seen as being particularly prominent that need to be addressed. The first one has to do with the fragmented regulatory framework, and I'm talking not just across countries, but also within countries. So if you look at some countries like Canada, okay, Canada is a large country, but still, even in some of the smaller countries, there are different privacy laws and different approaches and rules to managing issues like consent. And so the results is that it's become very, very difficult for a hospital, for example, to share data with some of the researchers at pan-Canadian level for accelerating clinical optimizations, research, innovations, and so forth. And these fragmentations exist across countries, but as I said, also within countries. The second one has to do with the way the interpretation of legal framework exists. So there are legal framework for data privacy and uses and so forth. Their interpretation, even with similar framework like in the GDPR in the European context, is very, very, very different. And it has to do with issues like how do we interpret public interest? How do we interpret and define consent? How do we manage the de-identification? And it's in Germany, the approach is very, very different from Finland, for example, even having the same legal framework. So we need to move towards a more homogeneous interpretations of those different aspects that make up the legal framework. The third area has to do with shared standards. So interoperability has been really a barrier. for ages, I mean, if we think about vendors of electronic medical records in the past, very, very different things, not interoperable standards. We are making progress, to be fair, to have like semantic standards which are more common, but is there really the political or even the leadership will to make sure that we use those standards in consistent way within and across countries? That remains to be addressed. And lastly, the health workforce skills. We do some survey on the skills of adults, so includes the health workforce as well as all sorts of other adults. And there are a lot of mismatches between the skills the health professionals have and what they think they would need to really do their job properly. And the great majority of the skill mismatch is linked to digital skills. So ability to use the tools, ability to interpret the data and analyze the data. So we need to upskill the health workforce if we want to make progress in this way. So these are like 4 main barriers that we notice in our work.
That's very interesting. So Thomas earlier talked a lot about curing human disease, but we also need to cure this regulatory disease of fragmentation, right? And speaking about that, I turn now to Hiroki, because you mentioned, and that's very interesting, that Japan often relies on a soft law approach to AI governance, complemented by selective hard law. So especially as a French person, I'm very interested in knowing that model. So how does this model work in practice and in general, and also if you specifically for health technologies in particular?
Sure. When we compare the policies in the European Union and Japan, most people say that, hey, Europe is taking the hard law approach while Japan is taking a soft law approach. Actually, that is completely wrong, because Japan also has a lot of regulation that can be applied to AI systems. For example, we have copyright regulations, we have healthcare regulations, we have finance regulations, or we have Personal Data Protection Act. Likewise, already there are a lot of regulations that are applied to AI systems. Then what are the differences between EU approach and Japan approach? The EU approach is different because EU has, in addition to those existing regulations, on top of them, you have the AI Act, which covers different sectors and also which is hard law. While Japan, even though we have a soft law on how to manage the risk of AI systems, they are just voluntary laws. But still, in the end, if you violate the Japanese existing regulations, of course you'll be sanctions. So the main difference is whether you have the holistic hard law or not. And about the scope, the interesting difference is that in the EU AI Act, usually it is regarded like if the AI evaluates human beings that is high risk, such as emotional recognitions or manipulation or social scoring. While in Japan, we don't have such a specific mindset like AI evaluating humans are very high risk. And that is maybe based on the cultural differences, because Japan has a long tradition of robot-friendly anime or mangas, where robots are not only the tools of human beings, but also like a friends who will cry with people, or who will even train people to make him or her a better person. So it's not like which is good, which is bad, but it's more like differences of culture. And the Japanese approach is, so first we want to make our regulations future-proof, meaning that the regulation will be more outcome-based rather than rule-based. And also we expect business stakeholders to be responsible, to be more proactive on risk management, designing your own governance, rather than asking the government to give you a specific set of rules. And also, as I said, Japan is more like robot-friendly. So we sometimes accept that robots affect humans' emotion or behaviors. And this May, Japan established a new act, which is not regulation, but act called AI Promotion Act, where the law gave the power to investigate the latest trends, best practices, risk cases, risk countermeasures. So the government now can ask those questions to the business stakeholders. And the purpose of law is not to punish the business, but rather to collect information, both on the good side and bad side, and to make our society better and make our government being more responsive to newly emerging risks under the existing legal framework.
Thank you. So aside those friendly robots, I was wondering, Petra, regulatory sandboxes are emerging across member states. What conditions are essential for them to actually accelerate responsible innovation rather than remaining just a simple box-ticking exercise?
So first of all, it is important to know what is a regulatory sandbox, and there are different definitions of regulatory sandboxes. The AI Act has a very clear definition of an AI regulatory sandbox, and this contains that regulatory sandboxes provide the possibility to test, train, and validate AI systems under real-world conditions. So regulatory sandbox, according to the AI Act, provides the possibility to test and validate in real environments. And in the healthcare sector, of course, the real environments are the hospitals, the clinical settings, clinical usability testing, clinical trials. But there's one challenge. We have heard about interoperability, about harmonization, about outcome-centered regulation. And the problem in healthcare is that there's actually a lack of harmonization of outcome measures. And this is another need, that we need harmonization and standardization of medical outcomes to be able to assess actually the impact, the performance of AI systems in the medical sector.
Yeah, thank you, Petra. Very true. And I think we all align here. Francesca, as AI systems increasingly support clinical and policy decisions, traditional evolution models may no longer capture their complexity. How do you think we should rethink the way we evaluate and regulate these AI-driven health technologies to ensure they truly improve outcomes and safety?
A big issue, but let me first say that I completely agree with the issues of standardizing outcome measures. I mean, we need to know what we want to achieve and what is good for patients, and we need to do it in the consistent way. I'm saying that's important because it's something that OECD, we have been working for a long time. We have an initiative also on standardizing measures of patient-reported outcomes and experiences, which is called Patient. So, sorry, I need to do a little bit of publicity, but it's a fundamental issue, so could not agree more. Now, on evaluating technology, of course, we need to evolve the way we evaluate technologies because the technologies are evolving, and that's a huge challenge. I mean, the typical technology that we had, and so think of a pharma product, it's relatively fixed, if we can say, over time. If we're talking about a software and an AI tool, that continuously evolves, and its evolution permits it to become better, more performing, more accurate, and so forth. And so it needs that we need to decide, okay, how frequently do we need to have another evaluation because the software has changed. So for major changes, maybe we need to have a new evaluation of the technology. For small updates, maybe not. And we need to clarify those criteria in terms of the flexibility through which we allow, evaluations to be done. That's the first thing. The second issue is I think the criteria also need to evolve because normally criteria for technology assessments are about safety, fundamental, of course, efficacy, performance, and so forth. But when talking about AI linked or even hybrid technologies, there are other issues that come to play. Things like privacy, for example, which are very important. Things about cybersecurity, which is always important. Things about equity. Are the data which are used to generate the tools sufficiently unbiased and representative of the population? So I think it needs to evolve to include these other criteria, which is fundamental to the change of the technologies. And I think it's also important to adapt the pathway for entry and market entry of the new technologies. So, for example, how do we facilitate fast-track access of technologies while requiring ongoing evaluation through real-world evidence from the use of these technologies so that we can continuously re-evaluate that. So we need to have that flexibility in the pathways, allowing quick entry, but also making sure that we evaluate the results in real time. And lastly, I mean, the international collaboration for us is fundamental. I mean, we need to, again, try to make things that converge a little bit across countries and not just being completely diverse. So these are just some thoughts.
That's truly interesting. And what I hear here is that it might be better to allow some flexibility rather than having rigid updates, which we know won't work in the long run, not even in the short run. And this is why I think it's a perfect moment to ask Hiroki, what can policymakers here can learn from Japan's approach to actually balancing flexibility and accountability in AI regulation? And how do you draw the line on acceptable levels of AI-related risk with such a flexible approach?
Yeah, I fully agree that it is very difficult to standardize what is a trustworthy AI systems or trustworthy AI-powered medical devices. I think that at least you should check 3 different layers. The first layer is the system itself. Even though AI systems are super complex, so if you cannot assess whether this AI is trustworthy or not only by reading the codes, but instead maybe you can check the trustworthiness of the AI systems by so-called red teaming, like trying to attack the AI systems millions of times to figure out what are the problems within this algorithm. So that is point 1, but this is not enough because in the end, AI is a system based on statistics and probability. So you cannot be 100% sure that it is okay for future any incidents. So that is why we also need to check if the operator, the organization is trustworthy or not. So whether the organization has a well-equipped with risk management systems or quality management systems or maybe documentation so that the organization can respond to the newly emerging risks swiftly after the unexpected accidents or misdiagnosis, etc. So not only the AI system itself, but you also have to check the organization. And finally, you also have to evaluate the stakeholder communication, transparency or accountability, so that you can deliver the message that, hey, this AI system is not perfect, but still it is beneficial for you. Or if, as a user or patient, try to use the AI systems, you have to take care of these risks, etc. So because AI system itself cannot be perfect, you have to communicate with the stakeholders or potential stakeholders well to make sure that this AI system will not cause severe damage. And finally, to answer your question as to how to agree with acceptable risk levels, it is very difficult, but what I can say is we need more multi-stakeholder dialogue. For example, this AI system is better than the average human doctor, but still it makes mistakes. So whether you accept this AI system or not depends on cultural context or maybe ethical context. So there is no specific answer. That is why we need to make sure that the dialogue happens between different stakeholders.
Thank you. Turning now to Saila. So we know the EU's AI strategy set out key pillars around data, skills, and regulatory simplification. Also, when President Macron came on stage last evening, if some of you were here, he stressed out how Europe and France, Cocorico, of course, should become a leader in AI. So how do you see those pillars coming together over the next few years to make Europe a global leader in trustworthy AI for health?
This is a very big question, of course. I'm perhaps not the person to give a comprehensive answer, but the Commission published and announced in April this year the AI Continent Action Plan that has really ambitious goals for Europe to advance AI and trustworthy AI and to be a leader in the world in this field. And the pillars that were or are in that strategy are around the simplification of regulations that we already discussed. In addition, of course, the skills. It's really important to attract talent, to have the right skills, both on the higher end and also at the level of healthcare providers, for example, if we are talking about health area. Then the ambition is to build large-scale data, AI and computing capacities in Europe in the form of so-called AI factories and gigafactories, and to create AI ecosystems in different domains around those basically high-performance computing centers. Then on the data side, it's important that we are unlocking high-quality data for health. And there was the European Data Union strategy that was published last week that is giving more measures in this field, and we have been already supporting unlocking of genomic data, medical imaging and clinical data in the European health data space. And also the application of AI, adoption of AI in the different fields across the society is one of the pillars, including in health.
Obviously. So thank you for staying with us during lunchtime. I think we provided a lot of food for thought for today. I'm happy to discuss during breaks if we can, and thank you very much for staying with us.